All right, so you'll make sure that if you can't hear me.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, thank you very much for joining us today for claiming your Google business profile. Hey Chris, just out of curiosity before I kind of get started here, how many people do we have?
We have 6 with us so far.
Nice, okay. All right, let me just get shifted over here and share my PowerPoint. Get this started. Let me shift this around. All right, so Chris, can you see my my opening screen here?
We can, but go to display settings and switch the view.
Oh.
We're seeing your notes pages as well.
That's interesting. I did just switch it.
Now we're good.
Now my notes are over here to the right. That's what I was trying to straighten out here. Let's see. You know, last time I did this from my other computer. All right. So, are you on Google? Research shows that 97% of consumers search the web to find local goods and services, but only 37% of businesses have claimed their local business listing. Today's session will help you create or claim your Google business profile. When you get on Google, it's easier for potential customers to find important information about your business, including hours, phone number, website, GPS directions, as well as improve your overall SEO. So the Google business profile has been called many things, but they are all fundamentally the same. So you may have heard the term Google My Business, GMB, Get Your Business Online, Google Business Page, Grow with Google. Google keeps changing the name of this thing, but it's all remained the same. And so call it what you want, but the current name is Google Business Profile. And it is a fast and easy way for you to manage your online presence with Google. The profile connects you directly with customers, whether they're looking for you on Google Search or Google Maps. It doesn't work if you're searching with another search engine like Yahoo or Bing or Dogpile. Google has over 90% of internet searches. So in general, I'd say this is the first profile to claim. And if you really want to cover your bases for the extra 10%, then, you know, by all means do a Bing profile and get a Yelp profile and those other ones. But this is the low-hanging fruit. Google is the 900-pound gorilla. The business profile gives customers a single click to your website, phone number, and Google Map directions, plus hours and important updates. It's important to know that brands, organizations, artists, and other online-only businesses are not eligible for a business profile. We'll talk a little bit more about this on another slide. So like a Yellow Pages listing, the Google Business Profile is free and easy to update and maintain. So it's sort of like an old-fashioned phone book listing, but it's online and everywhere. It's part business listing, part social media platform, part mini web page. even though it doesn't require a lot of time or expertise, it should be a regular part of your social media and marketing. So it's going to look a little bit different on all the different platforms. It's going to look a little different on your phone, on your computer, on your iPad, or other kind of tablet, but it's going to be available on all the devices. So that's kind of nice. On the computer, it will look like this. So this is the way my office page looks on a Google search. So it's the right-hand panel that's in red that is technically the Google business profile, okay? And if you want, we can look at this live in a little bit, but you can see here that there are some buttons that function on the computer, and then if you were looking at this on the phone, it's going to be a little bit different with some different functionality. But there's a button for the website, for directions to my office. You can save the page and you can make a call. Let's see. On a phone, it looks like this, and there's that call button, which will actually dial the number directly from your phone. And the layout is just a little bit different. So I'm going to kind of go through this fast. I think that this is one of those things that if you are questionable or not eligible for the page, might take a little bit more discussion to figure out who is and who is not. But in general, the pages are for businesses that make in-person contact with customers during hours. So that would be like a retail store or a restaurant or a home-based business with a service area. And you want your address hidden. So that would be like a plumber who works out of their home as their office, but you don't want people coming to your house to try to buy supplies, because you don't do that. You're a service business. So businesses that are not eligible include businesses that operate exclusively by phone, email, or web. So pure online businesses. So if you sell, if you're a reseller of, let's say, candy online, that's not going to be a business that is eligible, because this is really about getting found locally, and specifically locally on the maps. If you are a home rental, a vacation, or for sale properties, like a real estate company that's listing individual homes for sale, or Airbnbs, not eligible. If you are a real estate company, you have a website, that company is eligible, but not an individual listing. Businesses that use PO boxes, not eligible. Again, this is about getting onto the map. Events held at venues that organizers don't have authority to represent. So if you're like a band and you're going around to different venues, you're not eligible for the page. Okay. So before using any of Google's products, you need to set up a Google account. This provides a single login, username and password, and access to all the connected Google products, like Google Photos, Google Drive, Gmail. And if you don't use Gmail, you can register any email address as a Google account by visiting the link at the bottom of the screen. So google.com/accounts. Oh, now I will just say, I'm going to go back here. In the event that you use your Yahoo or your AOL email address, you're setting up an account with Google. they're going to ask for your email address, that Yahoo account, and they're going to ask for you to create a password. You do not have to use, and you should not use, your Yahoo email password. You're going to create a new account with Google using that email address. So new password, keep things separate and secure. Okay. All right. So you start by claiming the Google Business Profile. And this is going to be the first step at google.com/business. You're going to search for your business. If you can't find it, you're going to start it from scratch. If they found you already, you're going to claim that page. Then you need to verify that you are the correct person who's authorized to maintain and own that page. And so verification usually is done with a postcard in the mail from Google with a 6-digit code. It usually takes maybe 5 or 10 business days to get that code in the mail. And so that's a little bit of a delay, but you can still create the page, edit the page, upload everything. It's just not going to be published until you do that. And that code is only going to be good for 30 days. So don't ignore the code when it shows up in your mailbox. Just take that card, log in, and put the code number in, and you'll be all set. You'll be verified. Some people, if they're lucky, get an option for a telephone or text verification, but it's rare, and I would discourage you from expecting that to happen. All right, so Google does not like to verify to PO boxes. So regardless of whether or not you get your mail at a PO box, do not write that in as your address. You're going to put in your real address, and if you are using like a UPS store to have a PO box that to the world looks like a street address, Google knows that those are PO boxes, and so don't use that kind of address either. They want a real address. So if you're home-based, put in your home address. You can then tell Google to hide your address to the public, but you do have to give your address to Google. All right, so once you've got your code, you're going to go back to the google.com/business. You're going to log into your dashboard or your page and put that code in. There are a number of scenarios that might happen when you're trying to claim the page that someone else owns the profile. So then you've got to try to get access or ownership given to you, and there's a process for that. Business owner can't remember the username or password. Maybe you created this thing years ago and you don't have access. You can reset it. And sometimes you claim a page accidentally, and you can also fix that as well. So not going to spend too much time on this, but if you need help, the SBDC is here to help you. All right, so what this is the dashboard, and we're going to be talking about this, but I just want you to know that, like everything I talked about before with the name changing all the time, Google is always changing the interface and how businesses interact with the pages. And so they're developing an easier way for people to access their page, which doesn't require you to use this dashboard, but the dashboard is great. It's so powerful and easy that we're going to be focusing on this. And when you know the features and benefits that are that you can use to edit the page, you can apply that to the new system that I'll show you in a minute. But dashboard remains, I think, the most powerful and direct way to access your page. So on the left-hand side, you've got the navigation for this dashboard: home, posts, info, all that kind of stuff. On the right-hand side or in the middle of the screen is where you do all your editing and updates. This is just a little zoom in on the left-hand navigation: home, posts, info, insights, reviews, messages, photos, products, website. They offer a free website. Most people don't want to use that, so we're not even going to talk about that, but they are offering it as a little freebie. And users who you can assign access to the page. Now, photos. Photos are really important and help you show the public about your business, whether or not it's specifically products or about the personality of the business or whatever. And this is also an area that the public can add photos to. So that's a great thing if you're a restaurant. For the most part, I think the public does a good job. But if someone posts a picture that you don't like, that maybe is a different business, or that the quality is very bad, you can report that photo and Google may or may not remove that picture. You can see here that on these pictures, it shows in the lower left of each one of these how many people have seen it and when it was posted. So you can also add your logo, which is really important. You can add videos, short videos, and this is where Google Business Profile becomes a little bit more like social media. Let's just see, before I continue here. So image quality matters. Photos should be in focus, well lit. The public may post terrible quality pictures, but you should not, okay? So quality really matters. So to get to the, just get over here, to get to the Google Business Profile dashboard, from when you're logged in under the right account, Google account, you go to a Google search page like this, and you can see here in the upper right corner are 9 dots. That is a link for the Google Apps. Right there, 9 dots. And in the upper right, you will see, or somewhere in this list, you will see the blue awning with the white G. It says business. That is the app that will bring you right to the dashboard. This app is also available for both Android and Apple. And just go to the correct store for your phone and type in Google Business Profile or Google My Business, and you will get to that blue awning with the white G. All right, so we're back at the dashboard and ready to go ahead and edit and update the information. Now, I said before that Google is trying to introduce this new way to edit your page, and it looks like this. So this is an image from my computer on Google Chrome, the browser, and you see here on the left-hand side, circled in red, are some direct links to edit the page. But I still think that everything is a bit more centralized in the dashboard, but this is what they're offering and encouraging people to do now. Also, if you're looking on the map, you'll see Manage Your Business Profile, and this will bring up, both of these links will bring up sort of a pop-up on the screen rather than going into the full dashboard. So they work. I think that it's a taste thing for you individually as to what you prefer. All right, so we were planning on doing a live demo with a client, but that didn't work out for today. So I'd like to ask if anyone has not started their page yet, but they are ready to. If you are willing to volunteer, know that we are recording this and planning on uploading it to our YouTube channel and making it visible to the world. But if anyone would like to volunteer, that would be great. We can walk through the creation of a page and let everyone sort of see the steps in real time. Or if no one wants to volunteer for that, I could just open it up to some questions now, or maybe in a couple of minutes when I'm done with the presentation, and start answering specific questions that you may have about your individual page, and just kind of like go through the audience that way. So Chris, help me out here, and let's see if we have any volunteers.
I have a Michael S. wanted to volunteer. He owns Wizards. I mean, he also has a question. So first we should address the question and then we could see if it's a good fit.
Great.
So Michael says, how would a DJ service fit into the rules for Google? I have a karaoke company that is formed under an LLC from his home address. We perform at venues, but also book private parties. I really want to be found on Google.
So in this instance, you're offering a service to the public, and so I don't see any problem with this, despite the fact that you're not a. I know that they say no artists or bands, but you're not a band. You're a service that someone would hire for a party, for an event, kind of like a caterer, right? Or a wedding photographer. And so people aren't going to see you, they're going to the event. So my understanding of the Google rules would be, you're good for this. And if you are willing to volunteer, we don't have to put on your camera for you personally, but we will ask you to share your screen so that I can step you through the creation. So what do you think?
Let me see. I promoted. Oh, let me remove your spotlight. And then let me do view standard. Michael, I promoted you to Michael S. I promoted you to a panelist. You should be able to share your computer screen and you could unmute. You're on mute now, but you could unmute your microphone to speak.
And just so everyone else knows, if you have questions about your page, at the end, we'll open up to some Q&A, and I'll be happy to try to answer some specific questions for you individually.
So Michael, you are a panelist. Oh, there you go. He's unmuted now.
All right, so you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing my screen. We're going to let Michael share his screen. And Michael, I'm going to ask you to go to open up Google Chrome, if you've got it, preferably, and go to Google, google.com/business. And Michael, thank you for volunteering. I appreciate it. Wizards Karaoke. Love it.
And we can't hear you, Michael. You could also call in and I'll put that information in the chat.
If he's got a karaoke business, he's got to have good microphones. Michael, just so that you know, we can't hear you and we can't see your screen yet.
He is struggling with the computer, it seems.
Yeah. Not on this stupid computer.
And Michael, I just put the phone number in the chat. It is, let me see if it could. No, I didn't put the phone number in the chat, did I? Let's see, it cut it off.
Hey, I'd like to thank everyone for their patience while we work out this little glitch here.
Let's see.
Oh, nice. All right, so we see your screen, Michael. Still can't hear you, but hopefully that will be resolved momentarily.
I finally found the phone number. They hit it so well. I put it in the chat. If you want me to speak it out, it's 1-346-248-7799. And the meeting number is 984-6626-3019. And since we're on the topic right now, Brian, I want to share my screen for just a second. And I wanted to ask you, I received the feedback to accept these changes. Did you make those changes?
No, I haven't touched the Los Lunas page.
Oh, okay. So people could actually suggest changes.
I guess so. You know, maybe you and I would have to look at this carefully to see what's been changed.
Okay, we'll look at that.
You know, whether or not maybe they messed around with the phone number, but we'd have to really compare that.
I think, Michael, it's *6. Yep, it's *6. Michael's asking how to unmute from the phone.
All right, looks like Michael is called in.
Try *6 now, Michael. There he is. He's unmuted.
I'm unmuted. How about that?
Wow, all right, congratulations. Now, Michael, let's go back to your screen. So you got to share your screen again.
Okay.
Welcome to our little webinar. I appreciate it.
Did that work?
Perfect. So go ahead and click
Right on.
Got It.
I'm sorry, click what?
Got it in the lower right-hand corner. Let's just accept those cookies from Google.
Got it. Okay, gotcha.
All right.
Okay.
Now, let me ask you, Michael, do you have a Gmail account that you're okay to use, at least for today? You can always change your account, but are you okay to use your Gmail for today's demonstration?
That would be fine. I have a question about that. I think that like my OneDrive and other Google things that I have are using a Yahoo account. Should we stay with that or should we use the Gmail?
I think the quickest thing for today is to use your Gmail. And then you and
Okay.
I offline, maybe, you know, after the event today, I'll help you to add the other accounts for access, okay?
Sure.
So, and are you logged into your Gmail?
I am not logged into my Gmail, no.
All right, just to keep things simple, go ahead and open up a new tab. Go to your Gmail.
See, I use Gmail so often. I don't even have it saved in all my tabs here.
All right.
But there's my Gmail. It popped up, so good.
Perfect. So go back to the previous tab and click on Manage Now.
Gotcha.
Type in your business name. Now we're looking for the name to pop up there, Wizards Karaoke. So
Right.
above that, it says Wizards Karaoke, create a business with this name. So click
Yeah.
on that. Yep. Scroll down a little bit. Click continue. Now, yeah, let's stay at the top. Don't scroll until I tell you to. I want everyone
Okay,
to see
so
this, right? So just remember, we're demonstrating for everyone. So
right.
choose your business type: online, local. Keep scrolling down a little bit. Service business, perfect. Click next. Now, we're going to pick a primary business category, but just know that you can add multiple business categories. So if, for instance, you were a taco restaurant, but you sold Mexican food, you could have multiple categories, and it has to come from a predetermined list by Google. I don't know where they're pulling this list from. So sometimes you can find an exact match, sometimes you cannot. So, let's see, they've got DJ, supply store, but you're not really a DJ supply store. Try karaoke. Is there anything above the karaoke bar that we can't see? Can you scroll up at all?
Oh, yeah.
It looks like
So
you
there
might
would be video karaoke.
Oh,
Maybe video karaoke.
sure. We can change that later, but I think that's a good first start. Okay.
Okay.
Click next. Now, so what area of where are you? What area of the state do you serve?
My partner and I live in Santa Fe, and we serve all the way to Taos and as far south as Belen.
Okay, perfect. So what we're going to do is we're going to start first with Santa Fe City. Okay, so type that in. I'll show you later how to add more areas. No, you're good. That's perfect. So you see underneath that Manhattan is an example, for example, right? So no, you got it. Stop. Back that out.
Oh, okay.
And see
underneath.
Oh, I
see. It's check mark down here. I got you.
Yep. So go ahead and scroll down a little bit and click on OK or next.
Yeah, gotcha.
Michael, I think that your Zoom settings, and I don't mean the Zoom chat that we're in, but the visual Zoom is a little bit too high for today. Yeah, can you zoom that?
How's that? Is that better?
Probably.
Is that better, or do we need one more?
Go one more. Good.
There you go.
All right. And then go ahead and allow Google Business to know your location. I would click on every visit on that little pop-up there.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So you want to put your phone number in here for the business. Okay. And do you have a website yet?
I do.
Go ahead and put it in.
Complicated name, huh?
That's some alphabet soup you got going there. All right. So I would put a check in the get alerts and tips. And
gotcha.
Click continue.
Yeah, I'm very interested in the respond to reviews. I understand that the Google search is driven by reviews, and we get a lot of reviews on our website, but not on Google.
Great. Well, I'll show you how to request Google reviews. Okay. So here's
okay.
Are you a home-based business?
We operate out of our home, but we perform at locations.
I understand. Okay. So you need to put in your home address here. And this is where Google is going to mail you the postcard. Okay.
Right.
And click next when you get the state in there. All right. And then put in your name for mail delivery purposes. And as you can see, Michael is not being given the option to do this by phone. So he's going to get the postcard. Go ahead and click mail. All right, the postcard is on its way. And so you're going to come back to the dashboard and just follow the instructions on the card when it arrives via mail from Google. It's kind of weird, but that's the way they do it. So go ahead and click continue.
Right.
All right, now you don't have to add hours, but if you do choose to add hours, you're not just putting in days, but you have to put in hours of operation. So, 8 to 5 or whatever. So do you want to do your hours? You can always come back and update this later.
Okay, well, so let's go ahead and we'll put in the times that we normally take phone calls, which would be on Sunday and Monday. So then it says close. Oh, I see the opens at.
Yeah.
We're going to open at because we get in at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. We're going to go 12 to 5.
It's a party business.
It is a party business.
Now, I might suggest, because even though these might be the times that you're answering calls, if people call anytime, you're going to get the message and you're going to respond to them, as soon as you can.
Absolutely.
And so,
yes,
in some ways, it's not really necessary to put in hours because you're going to be getting back to people.
yes.
That might be my advice, is to not do hours, because people
Okay.
might, I can't call on Sunday. I can't call on Monday.
Okay.
So I would put closed, because they're going to force you to put in those hours. So I wouldn't do any hours. I would do closed all these times.
Oh, okay.
This is a little kind of strange oddity about the Google profile, is that you can't say call anytime or by appointment, or it's either open with hours or not. It doesn't mean that you're
Right.
closed. It just means that you're not publishing the hours. Okay.
Right.
So
Okay.
let's do next here. Now, messaging is like text messaging, but it comes through the Google app.
Great.
I normally don't recommend, at least on the initial setup, doing it. So I would uncheck that and click next, and then working with your SBDC counselor, you can decide if you want to get text messages. Okay. Now here is where you can add a business description. They give you 750 characters to write about your business, and I encourage getting as close to 750 as you can. So for today, since we're not going to take a lot of time to edit and refine this, do something really short, but then your assignment will be to come up with a well-written, brief description that uses some keywords about your business. So if you do weddings and parties, you want those words, weddings and parties, in your description. If you're proud of the fact that you went to Albuquerque High School or Santa Fe High School, and you put that in there, unless I'm looking for a DJ who went to Santa Fe High School, right? These keywords aren't going to work, right? Weddings, parties, and bar mitzvahs, and quinceañeras, and all that kind of great stuff. So
exactly, yeah. I can't spell quinceañera, so I didn't put it in there.
Okay, and so you will, like, this is an important assignment for everybody who does these pages, is to use this space that they're giving you for free to market and improve SEO search results. Okay, but for today, we're going to leave it at this. Okay. So
would you put a phone number in this block as well? I know that it'll be up on the other one.
No web address. All that is sort of baked into the page already.
Gotcha.
Okay. So yeah. A lot more can be done with this, but for today, we're going to leave it at that. Okay. So go ahead and click next.
Sure, I got you.
Now, we're going to skip these photos because what I'm trying to do is get through these introductory screens and get you to the dashboard. So scroll down and skip. Now, we have a partnership with Google to help our clients, like we are today, do this, but we're not Google, and we're not here to sell you advertising. Okay, this is an ongoing offer that they make to get some credits for advertising, for Google AdWords, and you can link your dashboard to your Google AdWords account if you want to, but don't feel like there's any pressure on you, like this is a one-time offer. You can get this later. And I would
Great.
again say, work with your SBDC counselor about a marketing budget. And Google is part of that, but there would be other things. And so just know that this needs a little bit more thought and planning, and we're going to skip this for today.
Brian, I'm guessing you and I will be talking sometime soon.
You're in Santa Fe. Yes,
Yes, I need to schedule an appointment with
we'll
you.
set you up as a client. All right, so your edits will be visible once verified. So in 5 or 10 days, when you get the card, you'll verify the page. Continue. Now, let's go to your, looks like, yeah, let's go to your dashboard. So in the upper right corner, you got the 9 dots. Just to the left of your photo. Yep.
Yeah, I had to move you. You were blocking my dots there.
Oh, my big head. I'm sorry. So go ahead and click on the blue awning with the white G. It says business. All right. Now, this is where Google is trying to force you out of the dashboard to their new pop-up thing. But we're going to stay here for today. We're going to say
they're pretty intent on me, huh?
Yes, they are, but not now. Don't even answer it. No, that's
okay.
Just click not now. Okay, so now we're in the dashboard. So congratulations, we made it through like the first phase of this creation. Okay, now
Cool.
Over on the left-hand side, it says info. So a lot of the information that we just typed in is in this info section. So click on info. And here's where every one of these pencils that you see. Okay, Fran, thank you for joining us. Talk to you soon. Every one of these pencils is editable, right? So if you wanted to add Wizards Karaoke LLC, I'm not recommending that you do that, but that's where you would edit the business name. Stay at the top here, and we're going to go through this slowly, okay? And also we're going to do it quickly, but I just want everyone to see all the options. So go ahead and click on the video karaoke category button or pencil. Yep. Okay. So here's where you can add categories. So the one that popped up is your primary category. So click off of that and click add another category. Go ahead and type in karaoke. Let's just see if we can get a straight karaoke, not on the second one above that. Yep.
Sorry, got click happy.
That's all right. So go ahead and click karaoke. And go to the next one. And type in karaoke again. Now you see there it says karaoke equipment rental service. That's really your business, isn't it?
Sure.
Okay, let's make that your primary category. So go up to primary category where it says video karaoke and type in, just back that out and put in karaoke again. So we couldn't see this before on your screen because you were kind of so zoomed in. Great, click that. And now if you want to change that third one to video karaoke, I think that's good for today. You got 3 categories. Keep typing. Yep, there it is. And click apply. You can do, I think, up to maybe 20 categories, but you only want to do things that really apply to your business, okay?
Well.
Your business category requires because it's a rental service.
Right.
A rental service. That's kind of weird the way they worded that. So you know what? Let's change your primary category to karaoke. Just plain straight karaoke. and X out the second one. Try to apply that.
So I'm assuming that they're saying that you have to have a kiosk for somebody to go do a video karaoke.
You know what, for
Recording.
today, let's cancel that. Because I
Okay.
think we're okay the way we had originally set it up. So click cancel, not apply.
Oh, cancel. Okay.
Yeah. Well,
I got you.
I will come back to that and we'll figure it out. Okay. I've never done a karaoke business before, so this is a little new to me.
Yeah.
Now, let's real quick add a couple of more areas for the service area. So click on the pencil for service area. Type in Santa Fe County. Yep, right there. You can type in Taos. You can add in one or two more and then we'll move on. Albuquerque, perfect.
All right.
Great. Oh, no, you got to hit enter on that.
Enter.
Up yet. Los Lunas.
Okay, I'm hitting enter. Is there a limit to how many you can?
No, you can add a lot here.
Yeah.
Something's not quite right with that. There it is. Okay.
There it is. Okay.
So click apply. All right, let's scroll down a little bit more. We're going to skip the hours. Make sure the phone number is correct. Make sure the web address is correct. And if your website is secure HTTPS, go ahead and edit that so that you've got the S in there.
Okay.
HTTPS, if that's what you have.
I don't know for sure, but I think probably so.
Okay. We're going to skip products for today, but from the business is a place where you can add some attributes about the business. You know, we'll visit that later because I don't want to run out of time today. So keep going a little bit. So
I got you.
This section where it says provide DJ and karaoke services, this is where you're going to work on this and you're going to get as close to 750 characters. Remember, it's not words, it's characters. So each letter is a character, okay? And so I really want you to come up with a well-written description of the business that Google can read and help you with your search results. Let's add an opening date. So when did you start the business?
2019.
Perfect. So let's put a year and a month. You don't need to put a day. Great. Now, at the bottom, it says add photos. We're not going to use that button because over on the left-hand side on the navigation, it says photos. Click on photos. Yep. Now, do you have a logo? Go ahead and click got it. Do you have a logo for the business?
I do.
So scroll down a little bit. Right there, it says logo. Choose a photo. And let's put your logo up. Preferably a square image.
Okay. Select photo from your computer.
Pull those grab handles out so that you get the whole image there and it's not cropped. That's pretty good. So go ahead and click Set Logo. And if you look across the top here, it says Overview, Video, At Work, Team, Identity. This helps you to organize the pictures in a way that makes sense. So like team would be a headshot of you or you and your employees.
Correct.
Video obviously is for uploading short 1, 2, 3 minute videos. Uploading
Right.
to Google is really a good idea, but just know that it takes a long time to upload, longer than you think it should. So be patient as you upload videos, okay?
All right, we can have coffee while it's doing it.
Pardon me?
We can have coffee while it's doing it.
Right, but not today. But so
No.
I really encourage everybody to upload pictures, maybe initially upload 5 or 10 pictures, and then try to upload a couple of pictures a month, 2, 3, 4 pictures a month, just has you logging in, lets Google know that you are managing the page and they like to see activity. So a couple of pictures a month, a couple of posts a month keeps you your SEO search results as good as they can be. Okay.
Gotcha.
Now let's talk about. Let's see. So over on the left-hand side, with the navigation, scroll down a little bit. Under users is where you can add other employees, other owners, or you can even change your own to have your other email address that you wanted to use. So if you click on users here,
Cool.
now we're not going to do this right now because there's no reason for you to be showing so much information out to the web, but I want you to come back here later and add your other email address. You will get an email from Google saying Mike has invited you. You accept that, and then you'll be in here, okay? And then you can also delete the old account if you want, okay?
Gotcha.
All right, perfect. So go ahead and just click on there. Scroll back up on that navigation on the left. Let's go to posts. So this is just like doing a Facebook post or a LinkedIn post or an Instagram post. And in fact, if you're doing those, you might as well redo them here in Google. As big as Facebook is with billions of people, it still is a bit of a sandbox because the only people who are going to see your stuff on Facebook are the people that are following you. Here, anybody in the world who's using Google and is looking for a DJ in Santa Fe, they're going to find you. And so as a social media platform, this is all free. It's important to do posts occasionally. What I would say is, this is just some information about this. X that out. And in the lower right corner, there's that sort of blue dot. All the way over to the right, Mike? No, far right.
Oh, right.
Yep.
The other right.
Right, the right. So click on that blue dot.
Create your first post.
No, to the right of that. Maybe my picture is covering it.
Oh, there it is. I got you.
Okay, sorry. So here's where you can create a post, okay? And these are the kinds of posts that you can create across the top. It says COVID-19 update, offer, what's new, event, product. So normally, I think what we use is what's new and events. In fact, this class today is a post on my page as an event with a link to the sign up on our website. So you can do stuff like that. So we're not going to do a post for you right now. I'm going to demonstrate in a minute or two what posts can be. It doesn't have to all be stuff that you've created. Maybe there's an article about hiring the best DJ for your party that came from let's say Rolling Stone magazine or the New York Times, and you want to share that, you could actually share an article here. So it doesn't all have to be self-created content. But by all means, if you've got your own content, do your own content too. Okay, mix it up. If you're going to be at a public event, not a private party, you wouldn't want to promote a private party as an event, but
No.
you can do an event. So these are great, and they will be seen by people. So don't forget about doing posts and uploading pictures. So go ahead and X that out. Upper right.
How much difficulty do I get into if I put an event as a regular karaoke show that we would do at a venue?
Probably, I think that would be fine.
Okay. That's what we do on Facebook.
It might be better to, ask for forgiveness from Google rather than ask for permission. So.
I got you.
Yeah. But yeah, if it's a public event and you want to promote it, then you could do that.
Okay.
Now click on home. I'm going to show you one last thing. We were talking before about requesting reviews. Okay. So in the main panel on the sort of middle and right-hand side, there's a lot of information here, and scroll down a little bit. A little bit more. There's that advertising thing that we were talking about before.
Right.
Let's see.
Get messages from customers. No.
Now, this is one of those times where Google is changing the interface. There's usually a button here about getting more reviews. It's possible it's not showing up because you're not verified, but normally there's a button here that says, ask your customers for reviews. And you click on that, and it gives you a link that you could put into a text message. You can put it into an email message, and it takes people right to that page to write a Google review. You don't need to explain what a Google business profile is. You don't need to, give them some long email link. It makes it very easy. So this is where you would normally find that. And I'll try to show it on my screen in a minute. So
what about this one, the manage your business on Google? Would it be contained within that?
So this is what they were trying to do at the beginning, where they were saying, hey, are you sure you want to use the dashboard? Right. Okay. So that's just going to take you back out to a Google search with pop-up screens rather than being in a dedicated window for all these features. Okay. So perfect. Normally, if I was working with you in a one-on-one session, Mike, we would spend more time. I'm going to end it.
I got you.
I'm going to end it for today, and you and I can continue on this. But this sort of is like the bare minimum. Oh, and you know what else is kind of cool? We'll do one last thing. Scroll back up. No, I was hoping we could see your page, but maybe because it's not verified, we can't see it yet.
It's not verified yet, right?
Right. So normally there's a button here also to see your page on search.
I think it's under info.
Is it? I don't think so.
Is that it there? Is that the page there?
No.
Kind of looks like it.
It's usually on the right side.
Scroll down a little bit more. Yeah, it's not here. But it will be when you verify.
Right.
Yeah. So, Michael, thank you very, very much for being our guinea pig today, and thank everyone.
No, thank you.
Else with us today for kind of being patient and sitting through this. I've got some more information that I'm going to present. So I'm going to stop your sharing, and I'm going to continue with my screen. But thank you. And just know that, like everyone else, you've seen this done. You can do this for yourself, or you can be in touch with Chris. He's very good at this. You can be in touch with me, or you please be in touch with your SBDC counselor in your community. We have 18 offices across the state, and so we're nearby and ready to help you with this and all other aspects of your business. Okay, so let me go back here to my screen. I'll go here.
Hi, Brian. We're seeing the notes view.
You are. What about now?
Yes, still, but it's bigger.
That's weird. I didn't make any changes. Maybe I did that wrong. Chris, how about now?
You're good.
Okay, so there's always multiple ways to do things with Google. To start claiming your page, go to either gybo.com, google.com/business. That's what we did for Michael just now. You can also go to localopportunitywithgoogle.com. So just different ways to get to the same place. I'm just going to go back here. I got a couple of notes here. So the Google Business Profile is free. There's no catch. I've been working with Google on this program for the last 7 years, and I'm as enthusiastic about it today as I was at the beginning. It doesn't replace a business website, but it complements it by giving your business a public identity and presence on Google. If you don't have a website, there is a function that will use the profile information, everything that we just set up today, to generate a very simple web page for free, but the emphasis there really is on simple. Your business will appear on Google Search as well as Google Maps. If you operate out of your home, you might not want to publish your physical address. That's not a problem. You can keep your address hidden. And just so that you know, some of the aspects of how Google determines search results are based on relevancy, distance, and prominence. And so some of these things you have control over, like prominence and relevancy, based on the words that you use and how easy you are to be found. Distance, not so much, right? So if I was in Las Cruces and I wanted to get a DJ, I'm probably not going to see Michael's business. But if I was in Santa Fe, now he's competing in a smaller area, and that's where things like the keywords and pictures and your website and all those other bits and pieces come into play for organic search results. Okay. You're going to get the presentation today, and there's going to be links here for all these FAQs from Google. So just know that lots of questions get answered right here. Okay, so I've got about a 2-minute video here, maybe a little bit longer than 2 minutes, that is about this amazing feature that Google is offering for free about getting marketing materials from Google, professionally developed, beautiful marketing materials at the website down below. So I'm going to play this and we will return in a moment.
How can I download free personalized marketing materials for my business? Google offers free customizable marketing materials.
Do you want me to open it up, Brian, to where people could raise their hand and speak if they want to ask a question?
Personalized with information from your business profile on says that have a verified business.
Brian.
First, visit G.
You know what? We're having a little bit of a lag.
You can click on it. If you don't, it means you need to business profile first. This video is focused on
Brian, I think sharing that video was just too much for the computer.
Images ready to share as social media posts.
Chris, is there a problem?
Yeah, it's buffering. There was a lag between you. Could maybe just sending out the URL to the video. Oh, there it is underneath.
Yep. Yeah, I think my internet connection is a little wonky right now. You want me to try again?
We could try it again, but it was making it was like freezing your video up too. At least for me.
Yeah. You know what? How about if I'm going to stop my video, that might help. Okay.
How can I download free personalized marketing materials for my business?
Brian, did you share sound under more?
Customizable marketing materials personalized with information from your business profile.
Say that again, Chris.
Did you press share sound under more? It's an option under more, and there should be something that says share sound, share computer sound.
Under more, hold on. Okay, we'll try that again.
How can I download free
Perfect.
personalized marketing materials for my business? Google offers free customizable marketing materials with information from your business profile on Google. The kit is available to brick and mortar businesses that have a verified business profile. Let's walk through this step by step. First, visit g.co/marketing-kit. Type in your business name. If you see it appear in the drop-down menu, you can click on it. If you don't, it means you need to create a business profile on Google first. This kit has a lot to offer, including messages for business updates, window stickers, and more. Cards and business cards, stickers, stickers and digital images ready to share as social media posts. The section titled Display allows you to create and download a full suite of marketing materials. Click Customize. Asking customers to support your business by writing reviews. Select the option you want to showcase in your materials and then click Next. There are 4 graphic styles to choose from. I'll choose the one called Chalkboard. This style is available in multiple colors, so choose the color that you think works best with your brand. I'll choose teal. Then Now, click Download All to prep your customized materials. Then, click Download it now to save the files on your computer. Your marketing kit will download as a zip file. Open that file to get a folder with all the files Google created just for you. Your kit includes digital images you can share online, as well as a variety of print-ready material posts for you to share on social media or add to your website. You can repeat these steps as often as you like to create materials with different customer reviews, styles, and colors. And that's how you can download free, personalized marketing materials for your business.
Camera up and running again.
How can I download free, personalized marketing materials?
As I said earlier about the name of this page, Google likes change. It is inevitable, but the function remains, and it's a great addition to your marketing and whatnot. We get, for my office, almost 1,000 views every month on our page. I have a client here in Santa Fe that, believe it or not, gets 150,000 views a month, and they do not pay for Google advertising. So, and there's a way to look at all that data in the dashboard called Insights. So this continues to be a great product and a great way to market your business. And that kind of wraps it up for me today. I'd be happy to answer any questions or do a little demo of my page if people want that. So don't be shy, and thank you for attending today. Chris, do we have questions that are?
No, I don't see any questions in the Q&A, but if the participants want to raise their hand and ask a question, I'll allow them. Okay, Michael. Michael, you could unmute yourself and ask a question. Michael S., that is. Oh, that Michael was having, okay, there he goes. He's unmuted, but he might have to call in if he wants to ask. Let me see what's in the Q&A. Robert Martinez asks, how secure is the web is this website?
So as long as your Google account is secure, and you're not reusing the same password over and over and over, and you haven't made it too simple, I think Google has very good security on all of its accounts, whether or not it's a Gmail or a Google. And so I'd say it's good. If you want to get into a habit of changing passwords with some routine, that's not bad. But in general, I think Google needs to have high security. And so you're going to get the same kind of security with this as you do with any other Google product.
Let's see. can't type in question, I would love to see your Google profile.
Yeah, let's do that. So I'm gonna stop sharing. I'm going to reshare. So here we've got, can everyone see my profile?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the profile that I was talking about. It's the panel on the right-hand side. This is a link to our website. So I'll click on that and I'll show you where that takes the page. So I set this up so that it goes to my portion of the statewide website. So you have a choice as to exactly where it goes. But instead of going to our homepage, I went to the page about my office. Okay, so that's working correctly. Directions would bring up Google Maps, which you can then forward to your phone and get directions. And this call button actually will say, do you want to call using your phone? And it'll send the phone number from the computer to your phone, assuming that things are connected correctly. Here we've got our address, our hours. If you click on this here, it pops up for the rest of our hours. Here's our business description that we were talking about before, and we are using, I don't know, somewhere about 650 characters, something like that. So it's not that long, but it's enough. Here are posts. We were talking about posts earlier. And so here's the class that we're in today. And I will click on this and you can see the way this works. So now we can scroll down, and the sign up button here that I put in, that opens up the eCenter page that you all signed up for this class today. So that's working. Here's an article about mileage rate increase from the IRS, and it's got a link out to the article from a magazine called Kiplinger's. So that works. There's the event that we did last month. So I just post stuff that is pertinent to either us as a network or important to our clients. So this is about grants for restaurants, information from the SBA, from the Department of Commerce. So we have lots and lots of posts, okay? And underneath, this is some similar searches that people are doing. So it really stops right there for the Google Business Profile. And then, so you can just see here, this is my dashboard for the my page. And if you are curious, I'll just show you, I manage a lot of pages. So if I click on that link at the top here where it says Business Profile Manager, these are all the pages for the New Mexico Network and some other businesses that I manage. So there's Ruidoso, this is the Santa Fe Higher Education Center, my building, Silver City, Tucumcari. So you can see that once you add a second or third business, that's why the dashboard is so useful, especially for me, because I manage so many businesses. Was there anything else that you'd like to either see or ask about my page? Or any other questions at this point?
I'll allow you to talk, Robert, if you want to talk, and you could ask any other questions you might have.
Robert, it looks like you're still muted.
How about now?
Now we can hear you.
I was going to ask, I guess I kind of answered my own question in regards to how secure the website it would be. I guess I'm making reference to spam and a lot of trash stuff.
So there is no email address that's published with these pages. There's no place to put an email. So while it will give a link to your website, which may have an email address on it, they're not publishing an email. What I will say, and I haven't seen this as much recently, but in years past, people were complaining about getting phone calls saying, "Hi, this is Google. We're calling about your Google business page." It was never Google. Google will not call you unless you've reached out to them with a request for assistance. So, Chris, are you seeing phone calls, those kind of spammy phone calls?
I literally get one every day on the main business line.
I haven't gotten one. Now, maybe Juliana just doesn't even tell me about them anymore, but I'm not getting calls about this at all. So, but I think that's just sort of the way of the world. And I don't think that's a security thing in terms of Google. It's just the nuisance of spammers and people trying to sell you services. But this is a free service from Google. And if anyone tries to, sign you up with them for SEO or managing your page, I do not encourage that at all. Manage your own page. You can assign other people access to it to help you with some social media and posting, but you should always maintain your primary ownership of the page.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Brian, did you tell them about the free website that they could get from Google?
I mentioned it, and I think I even pointed it out briefly during the session, but
I have a client who lets me use hers as an example, if you'd like me to chat that over to you.
yeah, why don't you, I'll stop my share and you can share your page, actually.
Okay, sounds good. So this is just a client. She's a client. She's an artist. Her name's PC Gallegos. And she really didn't want to pay for a website because she's not selling anything online. She just wanted like a placeholder where she could send people if they wanted more information about her business or to see photos of her art. You could create an image, and this is called the Google cover image. We created this in Canva, and I did a Canva webinar on Tuesday. So if you're interested in learning about Canva, you could watch the recording once it's on our YouTube channel. It displays your updates. So Brian was showing you those updates on the web browser, but here it displays them on the website. You could write about yourself.
That's actually, all this information is being pulled directly from the Google business profile, right? You don't edit this directly, do you?
The only thing you edit directly is this area right here.
Oh, I thought that was just being pulled. Okay, that's interesting.
So it pulls it. So see where that little line is above about Patty Gallegos? It pulled in something and she didn't like it, and I was able to edit it on the website feature as an about Patty Gallegos.
Nice.
Because it allows you a little bit more, a lot more characters, as you can see. And then she just needed pictures of her art, and it displays the most current picture you upload. It doesn't, you can't put them in any certain order. And then it has your vital contact information. And
Once
if you're
again, getting pulled from the Google business profile.
Exactly, it's pulled directly from it. And you could choose, and you could also choose what this button is. So this happens to be get a quote. You could have call now, get directions, visit website maybe might be on there. And it displays your open time. So that advice Brian gave you about not having open or close times for a business that's home-based is good advice, because you don't want it to display as closed if somebody visits that website. Unless you're truly closed. She doesn't want calls after 5, so she is truly closed at 5. And but if you're a business that doesn't need a large website, an e-commerce website, you just want a simple placeholder for people to visit your business, this is a good option for you. And you could actually buy a web address. She purchased pcgagosart.com. Google defaults you, it would be something like pcgagos.business.site if she went with the free one, and this costs $12 per year, and you could do it at any time.
That's awesome.
Perfect. That's all I wanted to say on that. Let me
So simple, especially for a brand new business that, you know, isn't quite organized enough or have the budget to build a website, that, you know, this gets you started and gives you a little presence on the web.
Exactly. And the thing I like about it is they only give you a few color options. You're not spending a lot of time designing anything, and all that information, like you said, is pulled directly from your profile. So you only update one thing instead of two different sites, which I like.
Right. So any more questions from our attendees today about Google, about the SBDC? Anything else we can answer for you today?
Nothing in the Q&A, nothing in the chat, and you're welcome to raise your hand if you'd like to speak. Nope, I don't see anything, Brian.
All right. Chris, thank you so much for putting this on and for sharing the info as well. Thank you to Michael. Thank you to Robert for asking questions and participating. We'll hope to see you either online or in person at an SBDC office near you.